Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about police reform in America and its impact on education and policing the mentally ill. Hey guys, it's Cindy here, the LD educator, and as you know, I am a special education teacher. Well, the last video I did was very emotional for me just because where we are in America. I'm still kind of in a funk. I actually recorded a video 2 weeks ago to upload, and I just have not really felt released to actually release it. And I wouldn't even say release to, I don't know. I almost think that, what does it matter? Will it help? Is this the right content for my particular channel? And so for those of you who have been following the news in America, you know that right now the African American community is really demanding equality, and they're standing up and they're wanting police reform so that people won't continue to lose their lives for things that they shouldn't have. In that, I actually live in Atlanta too, in which just a couple of days ago we had another African American man to lose his life, and his name is Rayshard Brooks. So it is so heavy, and sometimes, at least with me, I retreat. I may not know how to deal with it, but I actually came across a new YouTuber last night, and her name, I believe, is Rochelle. Her channel is Millennial in the Middle, and she inspired me. She is going to be a new teacher this coming fall. She is going to be teaching history, and she so passionately, matter of fact, her channel is like brand new too, but she passionately told why she wanted to be in education and her plan to really make sure social justice is really taught and that kids really learn about the history of African Americans in our country. And it really sparked something in me because I love young people so much. And obviously she's not as young as the students that I actually work with, but I love millennials. And to see a young lady so excited, like even in the midst of where we are now, and so committed to really doing her part. It was inspiration for me to say, okay, Cindy, it's not time to sit on the sideline. You can't really always think about what other people are going to say. Like, this is a moment that we all have to use our voice, because being an educator, really the children are our future, right? And if we're going to get this right now, and if it's going to be sustained, then we're going to have to teach our children about these social injustices, how to live in harmony with each other anyway, which is basically learning other people's experiences, and then being able to have empathy and compassion, and then just, living in harmony. It doesn't always mean you have to agree, but, we want to live in harmony, right? That inspired me to talk a little bit about police reform and how it impacts education, and particularly those with mental illness. Now, I know we've been hearing the word defund the police. And when I initially heard it, I was like, wait a minute, stop the press, because I took it literally. When I hear the word defund, I'm thinking like, here's this budget, just cut this money out, or, get rid of. And really, that's not what the law is about. I'm not an expert in it. That's not what this video is about. But one of the parts that impact me and the community of people that I work with, or some of them, being a special education teacher, we often do work with people who have mental illnesses. I'm no stranger to seeing police having to interact with those with mental illness and not really having the training or the background to really deal with that population with empathy and compassion. When they say defund the police, if you were like me thinking that meant get rid of the police, just take away all of that money. No, it's not quite like that. And so far, the understanding that I have is meaning to take away certain responsibilities, is that they believe that police doesn't have any business doing certain things. Case in point, you have a person who have a mental illness. Now, they might have some behaviors, but overall they are not like this danger to the point where you need a police with a gun. Working in a public high school for years, almost 15 years, and as administrator, I've also seen kids taken out of the building in handcuffs because of behaviors. Once again, do we want to criminalize students at such a young age, particularly when they have these mental health issues? So when there's a root to the reason why they may be behaving the way that they're behaving, you know? And so that's the part that I want to kind of look at. And I'm just going to share a couple of instances or stories with you. The first one is of a little girl down in Florida. And this was big in the news. I believe it was 2019, 6 years old. She had had a temper tantrum in the school. I believe she kicked the resource officer, probably maybe ransacked like maybe a classroom or so, but just out of control. And I'm assuming school officials just kind of didn't know what else to do. They ended up calling the police. So when the police got there, he actually arrested her. So looking at this video where this police officer walks into the room, the little girl asks him, like, you know, what are you doing here? And he tells her, like, I'm here for you. Or she sees like the handcuffs or whatever he used to actually handcuff her. And she's like, well, what are those for? And he said, I'm going to put them on you. And then she begged him not to. And he did. And he escorted her out of the building and put her into the squad car, and I'm assuming took her down to the police station. Well, how that is so traumatic for a 6-year-old girl to have to experience that. Now, that police officer was fired, but I don't know if that is entirely his fault. Like, once again, when we're talking about system injustices, that's kind of a system thing that set him up, because the school had felt like they had no other choice but to call a police officer. Now, I'm sure he could have said no this or, you know, whatever, and I'm not here to kind of debate all of that, but the fact that a school has no other options, that they feel that they have to call a police who carries a gun, has these handcuffs, who comes and handcuffs this little girl and takes her off to wherever. Like, we don't know what that moment has done for her. And I'm sure it's probably caused a lasting scar. So when they talk about defund the police or reform, in which I don't know why we can't use another word so that it could just be crystal clear, what we mean, but we're talking about something like that, you know, something else would be put into place. More funds will go to that school in order for them to handle cases like that and not even involve the police officer. Now, this next story really was sad, because I was actually reading a friend's post. Just for context, it was a Black friend, and then and he was talking about how African Americans were just being killed at the hands of cops, okay? And then a Caucasian person posted saying that, you know, white people are getting killed as well. And the Black guy like challenged him, and he was like, tell me a story of a white guy that was killed. And so he put a link to this story, which the guy name is Tony Timpa. And actually Tony has a mental illness. And get this, he actually called the police on himself. He called the police on himself. He identified himself as a person with a mental illness. And he told them that he had taken some drugs or whatever, and he was concerned. And so once the police got there, you know, Tony was a little bit erratical, I guess. I mean, not like crazy, not enough to lose his life over. And there were several police officers. So this man went from calling the police because he needed help to dying. Like, they ended up handcuffing him, and I can see why they did it, because he was a little bit belligerent, and even on the ground he was kicking and flailing or whatever. But once again, it's about 4 or 5 cops standing around. Do you really turn him over and hold him down, put your knee in his back for 14 minutes? Like, and eventually he stops responding to you, and they continue to laugh and make jokes because at one point they even took out his wallet and looked at where he lived, and it was an upscale place. And so they was like, oh, what you doing here? So there are some bias there. Just because Tony had some mental health issues, that mean he poor. I really feel like there was not a reason for this man to lose his life. And therefore, my question is for those in the disability community. Like, your voice should be just as loud as African Americans right now who are speaking out against police brutality, because being a part of the Black culture, but then I also work with people who have special needs, people who may have mental health disabilities or illnesses, who are prime to have these encounters with police officers. Even with the Caucasian dude who posted it, one of the things after I looked at that video, my heart went out to Tony, not just because he's a person with a mental illness, but because he's a human being. No one should die at the hands of police officers, particularly when they called you for help. I don't even know why that there are not even people speaking up on behalf of the white community. The only reason why I feel like Black people are saying Black people is, one, because we see it so happen so often in our community. But if it's happening in the white community too, instead of those who have things against the movement of Black Lives Matter, why aren't you joining in? Why aren't you saying, hey, this happens in our community too? Let's join forces so that we can get something going, so that we can have the reform that we need in order to not have this happen. Because for me, like, people who countered Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter, I believe every life is precious, but we also can't get mad because, finally Black people are at a point saying, hey, I don't want to take this anymore. Our lives are precious. So instead of having all the contention, here's another subgroup, people with mental illness who need to be joining in this fight and need to be speaking on behalf of those with mental illness. And those of you who, and I don't have a lot of statistics, but I believe it, Tony was white. He had a mental illness and he was white. But if it's happening in your community too, then you need to speak up and you need to join. And as educators, we need to make sure that we are teaching our students how to conduct themselves when they are in the presence of officers, how to talk to them, how to address them. And it just even goes back to us working even harder to help our students coping strategies when they are in these crises situations. Because at the end of the day, education is key. So anyway, that's just kind of my take. I want to hear a little bit from you guys. What do you think about reforming the police? How does that look for you? What do you want to see? Have you had any experiences with police and mental health, or even in your school? We do have resource officers, and at least in the school that I taught in when I was in public schools, our resource officers were officers from the police department. So, they were there with guns and, all of that good stuff. And like I said, I've seen them arrest students. But if it's nothing violent, like, really, do we need to get them involved in that per se? That's my take. I would love to hear from you. Remember, please go check out Millennial in the Middle. Make sure you subscribe to her and make sure you support her channel. She's a brand new teacher. I just love it. I'm excited for her. I think it's awesome that she is even building a brand and a platform for herself. All right, guys, once again, thank you so much for your support. Please feel free to comment below. Make sure you like this video. And if you have not subscribed, please feel free to subscribe. All right, until the next time, you guys be good. Bye.